A witness says they heard it long after dark. Another witness reportedly saw a flare. And both observations came from the same general area where the sailboat Soulmate was anchored on the night Lynette Hooker disappeared. For weeks, people following this case have focused on one central question. What happened to Lynette Hooker in the Bahamas? Now a new piece of information has surfaced. According to individuals familiar with witness statements, one person reportedly observed a flare coming from the area of Soulmate. Another person in the same general area later reported hearing what they described as an unusually loud splash coming from the water. Investigators have not publicly confirmed these reports. The exact details remain unclear. But the claims are drawing attention because they may offer a glimpse into what was happening during the hours before Brian Hooker reported Lynette missing. And if those witness accounts are accurate, they raise a number of questions that investigators may already be examining. The story begins on what should have been another ordinary evening in the Bahamas. Lynette and Brian Hooker had been living aboard their 46-foot sailboat Soulmate. For years, they had embraced the lifestyle that many people dream about. Beautiful water, island sunsets, days spent sailing, a life away from crowded highways and busy cities. But sometime during the night, something happened. According to Brian Hooker's account, Lynette disappeared after falling from their dinghy while they were traveling through waters near the Sea of Abaco. He has maintained that she entered the water and was lost. Search efforts began. Rescue crews responded. Volunteers joined the effort. And yet, despite extensive searching, Lynette was never found. As the days passed, questions began to grow. Family members wanted answers. Search teams wanted answers. And eventually, many members of the public wanted answers too. That wasn't the only thing people noticed. The timeline itself became a major topic of discussion. People wanted to understand exactly what happened that evening. When was Lynette last seen? When was help requested? What actions were taken immediately afterward? And perhaps most importantly, who might have seen or heard something that night? Those questions have led to renewed interest in individuals who were in the area when Soulmate was anchored near Elbow Cay. According to reports discussed by people familiar with the investigation, a witness observed what appeared to be a flare originating from the direction of the sailboat. The exact time remains disputed. Some accounts place it around 8 p.m. Others suggest it may have occurred later. What appears consistent is that someone remembered seeing a flare-like event. That detail matters because flares are designed to attract attention. People launch flares when they need help. People launch flares when they want to be seen. And in boating communities, flares tend to be memorable, especially after dark. But there was another detail. A separate witness reportedly described hearing an unusually loud splash. Not a small splash. Not the kind of sound made by someone casually stepping into shallow water. According to discussions surrounding the witness account, the splash was memorable because it stood out against the quiet surroundings. The person reportedly remembered it because it seemed unusual. Again, investigators have not publicly confirmed these details. The exact circumstances remain unclear. But when information like this surfaces, people naturally pay attention, especially when it may relate to a missing person investigation. According to those familiar with the account, the splash occurred after things had become relatively quiet in the area. That is important because sound travels differently when surrounding noise decreases. During busy evening hours, conversations, music, vehicles, and boats can blend together. Later at night, a single unusual sound can stand out. The witness reportedly remembered the splash because it was distinct. That raised another question. If a splash occurred, what caused it? At this point, nobody outside the investigation knows. Could have been completely unrelated. It could have involved equipment. It could have involved activity on a nearby vessel. Or it could have nothing whatsoever to do with Lynette's disappearance. Right now, those possibilities remain unknown. Still, the timing has drawn attention, particularly because it occurred in the same general area where Soulmate was located. Meanwhile, family members continued searching for answers of their own. For Lynette's mother, every new detail carries emotional weight. Every witness statement matters. Every search effort matters. Every possible lead matters. Because when a loved one disappears, families often find themselves examining every detail. A phone call, a photograph, a conversation, a timeline. anything that might help explain what happened. For Lynette's family, that process has continued for months. And despite extensive efforts, many questions remain unresolved. According to individuals involved in search efforts, volunteers spent countless hours looking for signs of Lynette. Boats searched waterways. Aircraft searched from above. People walked shorelines. Others examined remote areas that most visitors would never notice. The Bahamas may look small on a map, but once searchers begin covering islands, inlets, shorelines, mangroves, and waterways, the scale becomes enormous. Every location requires time. Every location requires resources. And every location requires hope. Because searchers never know where the next clue might appear. That wasn't the only challenge. The geography itself complicated things. Many areas consist of dense vegetation. Some locations are accessible only by boat. Others require long walks through difficult terrain. And after enough time passes, environmental conditions can change dramatically. Tides move. Weather changes. Currents shift. What may have been visible one day may be impossible to find later. Search teams understand those realities. That is why time matters so much in missing person investigations. But there was another detail that continued attracting attention: the location of Soulmate itself. As public interest grew, investigators reportedly devoted significant attention to the vessel. Eventually, federal authorities examined the sailboat extensively. Photographs showed investigators aboard the vessel. Reports indicated evidence was collected. The exact nature of that evidence has not been publicly disclosed. Authorities have remained relatively tight-lipped about many aspects of the investigation. That is not unusual. Investigators often keep information private while they continue gathering facts. Still, the attention given to Soulmate led many observers to wonder what investigators may be examining. Family members have similar questions. The public has similar questions. And until authorities provide additional information, those questions remain unanswered. Meanwhile, discussions about witness observations continued. One reason people keep returning to the reported flare and splash is because they offer something concrete. A specific observation, a specific moment, a specific memory. Investigators often rely on witness recollections when building timelines. Even when those recollections are imperfect. Even when memories differ. Even when details require verification. Witness information can sometimes provide valuable context. At other times it leads nowhere. That is why investigators attempt to verify information before drawing conclusions. That is important to remember, because speculation can easily fill the gaps when information is limited. But speculation is not evidence. And evidence is what investigators ultimately need. According to people familiar with boating in the area, nighttime conditions can vary significantly. On some evenings, visibility is excellent. On others, darkness settles quickly over the water. The witness reports suggest these events occurred after sunset. That means visibility would have been different than it was during daylight hours. A flare, if one occurred, would likely attract attention. A loud splash, if unusual enough, could also stand out. But understanding exactly what happened requires more than isolated observations. It requires context. And that context remains incomplete. As the investigation continued, attention also focused on the final known movements connected to Lynette. What happened aboard the dinghy? What happened aboard Soulmate? What happened during the hours before authorities became involved? Those questions remain central to the case. Investigators have likely examined far more information than the public has seen. Phone records, electronic data, witness interviews, physical evidence, search findings. All of those elements contribute to a broader picture. But until authorities reveal additional information, much of that picture remains hidden. For Lynette's family, waiting has become its own kind of burden. Every day without answers feels longer than the last. Every update creates hope. Every delay creates frustration. And every new report brings renewed attention to the case. That includes reports involving the splash. Because while nobody knows exactly what caused it, people naturally wonder whether it could be connected. That question remains open. According to those discussing the witness account, the splash was described as significant, memorable, something that stood out. And when a witness remembers a sound months later, investigators typically want to understand why. Not because it automatically proves anything, but because unusual observations sometimes become important later. That wasn't the only thing people were discussing. There were also questions regarding timing. If a flare was seen, when exactly was it seen? If a splash was heard, what time was it heard? How close together were those events? Were they related? Or were they completely independent occurrences? Right now there are no public answers, only questions. And those questions continue to fuel interest in the case. Meanwhile, search efforts and investigative work continue. Authorities have not closed the case. Family members continue seeking information. Supporters continue following developments. And many people remain hopeful that additional answers will emerge. The disappearance of Lynette Hooker has affected far more than one family. It has touched search volunteers, boating communities, residents of the Bahamas, and countless people who have followed every update since the beginning. Because at the center of every development is a woman who remains missing. A daughter, a mother, a friend, someone whose loved ones continue searching for answers. And now, with reports of a flare and a loud splash drawing fresh attention, investigators may have additional pieces of information to examine. Whether those reports ultimately prove significant remains unknown. Whether they connect to Lynette's disappearance remains unknown. Whether they help explain what happened that night remains unknown. But they have become part of the growing list of questions surrounding this case. And perhaps that is where we leave part 1. A reported flare. A reported massive splash. A sailboat called Soulmate. And a missing woman whose family is still waiting for answers. If those witness accounts are accurate, what do you think investigators should focus on most? The reported flare, the reported splash, or the timeline connecting the two? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're following the Lynette Hooker case closely, be sure to subscribe because there are still many unanswered questions, and we'll continue tracking every major development as this investigation moves forward.